Once upon a time, in a large and peaceful forest, there lived many animals. The trees were tall and green, the air was fresh, and a sparkling river ran through the heart of the forest. The animals loved living here, for it was always calm and safe. There were birds that sang in the mornings. Frogs croaked near the river, and many other creatures wandered about, living their simple lives. Among these animals was a small, clever sparrow. She was not as big or strong as the other animals, but she was very quick and very smart. Her name was Jenny. Jenny had sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She knew the forest like the back of her wing. While the other animals depended on strength, size, or their natural abilities, Jenny used her brain to survive. The larger animals often overlooked her, but Jenny didn't mind. She was used to being small. The other animals in the forest included an elephant named Ellie, a crocodile named Chet, a baboon named Benny, a porcupine named Petra, and a turtle named Tessa. Each of them had their own special skills. Ellie was strong and tall, with a loud voice that could be heard for miles. Chet was sly and quick, though he was sensitive about his short legs. Benny, the baboon, was always full of energy, jumping from tree to tree, and loved playing tricks on the others. Petra, the porcupine, was calm, but carried sharp quills to defend herself. Tessa, the turtle, was slow but wise beyond her years. As the dry season approached, the animals knew they needed to work together. The forest would be scarce in food, and they would have to gather all they could to survive. One sunny morning, they all gathered in the clearing near the river. The air was warm, and the sun shone brightly through the trees. "Let's work together to gather food," Ellie said in her loud voice. "We'll need to share what we find, so we don't go hungry when the dry season comes." The animals agreed, and they spent the day gathering fruits, nuts, and vegetables. The larger animals, like Ellie and Benny, could carry large amounts, while smaller animals like Jenny flew to the highest branches to find hidden treats. By the end of the day, the animals had gathered more than enough food. They all sat together in the clearing, ready to divide the food among themselves. But that's when things started to go wrong. As the animals sat down to divide the food, something unexpected happened. The larger animals, feeling entitled to more because of their size and strength, began to argue about who should get the biggest share. "I carried the most," Ellie trumpeted. "I should get the biggest portion." "No," said Benny, swinging his tail in the air. "I did more work. I found the biggest fruits." Chet, the crocodile, was sitting quietly, watching the argument. But he didn't like being left out. "I found the best hiding spots," he said slyly. I should get the most because I did all the thinking. Jenny, the sparrow, watched in silence. She knew something was wrong. The larger animals were greedy, and it was clear that they didn't want to share fairly. Tessa, the turtle, tried to calm them down. Everyone has worked hard. Let's share the food fairly, she said in her slow, thoughtful way. But the animals didn't listen. They were too busy arguing to pay attention to Tessa. As the argument grew louder, Jenny thought to herself, "This isn't right. We need a plan to make things work." Then Jenny spoke up. "What if we all share our weaknesses?" she suggested. "That way, we can avoid stepping on each other's toes and respect what each of us needs." Ellie looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Jenny explained, "let's all share something about ourselves that we don't like or that makes us uncomfortable. If we know each other's weaknesses, we can avoid making each other upset." The animals were curious. "Go on," Benny said. "All right," Jenny began. "I'll start. I'm small, and sometimes the bigger animals forget that I need my share too. But I'm clever, and I can always find a way to make things work." Ellie nodded. "I don't like loud noises near my ears. They hurt." Chet grunted. "I can't stand when others tease me about my short legs. It makes me feel embarrassed." Benny scratched his head. "I don't like it when someone touches my tail. It makes me feel strange." Petra, the porcupine, shifted uncomfortably. "I don't like it when anyone comes too close to my quills. I'm just trying to protect myself." Tessa, the turtle, smiled gently. "I don't like being turned over onto my shell. I can't move when that happens, and it makes me feel helpless." The animals agreed that it was a good idea to respect each other's weaknesses. They continued to gather around the food, but things took a turn for the worse when the larger animals began taking more food for themselves, leaving the smaller ones with very little. Jenny, feeling cheated and hungry, flew high into the trees to think. She didn't like how the larger animals were taking advantage of the situation. She had shared her vulnerability, but they hadn't kept their promise to respect each other. "I'll have to do something," Jenny thought, her sharp mind already working on a plan. The sparrow came up with a clever idea. She decided to use each animal's weakness to cause a little chaos. Not enough to harm anyone, but enough to teach them a lesson about greed. Jenny first flew over to Benny, the baboon. "Did you hear?" she asked, her voice light and mischievous. "Chet was making fun of your tail. He said it was funny looking." Benny's eyes widened. He immediately jumped from his seat, his eyes full of anger. "What did you say?" he yelled at Chet, running toward him. Chet, startled, looked up just as Benny grabbed his tail. The crocodile let out a surprised growl as Benny tugged hard. "No! Stop!" Chet yelled. But it was too late. In the struggle, Benny accidentally brushed against Petra's quills. Petra's quills shot up in defense, and she yelped in surprise. "Watch where you're going," she shouted at Chet. Ellie, hearing all the noise, flapped her ears in irritation. "Quiet down," she trumpeted, but her loud voice only made everything worse. The sound hurt her own sensitive ears, and she began to trumpet even louder, which only made the animals more agitated. In the chaos, Tessa, the turtle, was knocked over onto her back. "Help!" she called out, but her voice was drowned out by the noise. As the conflict spiraled, Jenny flew high into the trees, a little smile on her beak. She had done it. The larger animals were so busy fighting and scrambling that they forgot about the food. The fight continued until Ellie, in a final burst of frustration, stamped her foot hard, causing the ground to shake. This scared everyone, and the animals scattered in all directions, running to avoid her stomping feet. Jenny, calm and clever as ever, flew back to the clearing. She looked around and saw that all the animals had run off. With no one left to stop her, Jenny swooped down and began eating her fill of the food. As she ate, she felt a sense of satisfaction. She had outsmarted the others, and now she could enjoy the fruits of her cleverness. When the sun began to set, Jenny stopped eating. She perched on a branch and looked out at the empty clearing. The forest was quiet now, and the stars were beginning to appear in the sky. Jenny thought about the day's events. She had learned something important. In a world where strength and size often win the day, it was intelligence and strategy that truly mattered. She also realized that sometimes you had to look out for yourself, because the bigger animals often didn't think about the smaller ones. She promised herself that in the future she would be more generous, but she would also remember to be clever and protect her own interests. As the stars twinkled above, Jenny felt content. She had won the day, and she was ready for whatever came next. The next morning, the sun rose over the forest, casting warm, golden light across the trees. The animals had spent the night scattered across the forest, each feeling confused and upset after the argument the day before. Ellie, the elephant, was the first to return to the clearing. Her large feet made a loud thud as she walked, and her trunk swayed from side to side. She looked around, hoping to find the other animals, but the clearing was empty. The food they had gathered the day before was gone too. "Where is everyone?" Ellie muttered, stamping her foot in frustration. "I should have gotten the biggest share of the food. I worked the hardest." Soon, Benny arrived, swinging from a tree branch with a mischievous grin on his face. But when he saw the empty clearing, his grin faded. "What happened to the food?" he asked, looking around. "I don't know," Ellie grumbled, "but I bet it was the crocodile. He always sneaks around and takes what's not his." Chet, the crocodile, appeared next, looking calm as usual, but he too was surprised by the empty clearing. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Petra, the porcupine, slowly walked into the clearing, her quills still raised in defense. She had been hiding near the river the night before, away from the chaos. "Who took all the food?" she asked quietly, her calm demeanor unchanged. Tessa, the turtle, appeared last. She had spent the night in the shade of a large rock, feeling confused about the events of the previous day. As she approached the clearing, she noticed how upset everyone was. "I think we've all made a mistake," Tessa said, looking at her friends. "We allowed our anger and greed to control us. And now we've lost the food and the peace we once had." The animals all sat down in the clearing, feeling guilty. They realized that their fighting had caused them to miss out on what was most important, working together. But where was Jenny, the clever sparrow? She had outsmarted them all the day before, and now she was nowhere to be found. Jenny, the sparrow, had been watching from the safety of a high branch, hidden from the other animals. She had seen how her plan had worked the day before, but now she saw the consequences. The animals were upset and confused, and the peaceful forest was filled with tension. "I've caused enough trouble," Jenny thought, feeling a little guilty. "It's time to make things right." Jenny flew down from the tree and landed in front of the other animals, who looked at her in surprise. She wasn't sure what to say, but she knew she had to speak. "Hello, everyone," Jenny said softly, her voice calm. "I've been watching. I'm sorry for what happened yesterday. I didn't mean to cause so much chaos, but I wanted to show you something." The animals listened quietly, still feeling a little uneasy. They had been upset with each other, and now here was Jenny, standing in front of them, offering an explanation. "You see," Jenny continued, "I used each of your weaknesses to make a point. But in doing so, I hurt all of you. And in the end, I took the food for myself. I got what I wanted, but I didn't feel good about it. Because I used my cleverness to take advantage of you, and that wasn't right." The animals nodded, understanding what Jenny was saying. They knew they had made mistakes too. "I think," Jenny went on, "that we can all learn something from this. We're all different, and we all have things that make us strong and weak. But instead of fighting, we should respect each other's differences. We should work together and share, because together we can achieve more than we ever could alone. Ellie, the elephant, felt a twinge of guilt. She had been so focused on getting the biggest share of the food that she hadn't thought about the others. "You're right, Jenny," she said, lowering her head. "I let my size and strength control me. I didn't think about how my actions affected everyone else." Benny, the baboon, nodded in agreement. "I was so angry that I forgot about respecting others. I need to be more careful with my actions." Chet, the crocodile, looked at Jenny thoughtfully. "I used my cleverness to make others feel bad. I see now that I shouldn't use my skills to hurt people." Petra, the porcupine, sighed softly. "I shouldn't have let my quills be a shield. I need to be more open and not so defensive." Tessa, the turtle, smiled slowly. "We all have things to work on, don't we?" Jenny looked at her friends, feeling proud of them for admitting their mistakes. We all make mistakes, but the important thing is that we learn from them and do better next time. The animals decided that they would work together again, but this time they would do it with respect and understanding. They spent the next few days gathering food, each animal contributing in their own way. Ellie used her strength to lift heavy branches. Benny climbed the tallest trees to pick fruit, and Chet used his sharp eyes to find hidden places where food could be found. Petra carefully searched the ground for nuts, and Tessa slowly gathered herbs and other small plants. Jenny, with her quick mind, helped by finding the best spots for the animals to search, making sure everyone had a fair share. When the animals had gathered enough food, they sat together in the clearing. The food was divided fairly, with everyone getting what they needed. This time, there was no fighting or arguing. As the days passed, the animals learned to respect each other's strengths and weaknesses. They shared not just food, but also their time and skills, and the forest became even more peaceful. Jenny, the clever sparrow, had taught them an important lesson. It wasn't about being the biggest or the strongest. It was about working together and using each other's talents to make the forest a better place. With the animals working together, the forest was peaceful again. The animals knew that they could rely on each other, and that no one was too small or too weak to be important. As the dry season came, the animals had enough food to last. They also had something more valuable than food. They had friendship and respect for one another. Jenny, the sparrow, flew high above the clearing, watching her friends. She smiled, knowing that the forest was in good hands. And so, the animals lived happily, working together to keep their home safe and full of joy. Reflection on the story. Jenny, the sparrow, learned that using her cleverness to outsmart others wasn't always the best path. Instead, she found that kindness, respect, and working together brought greater rewards. The animals in the forest also learned to value each other's differences and work as a team. The story of the wise sparrow reminds us that no matter how small we are, we all have something valuable to offer. And when we work together, we can achieve great things.